Hi, good morning and welcome to our weekly Tuesday Temple Takeaway, and trust you're all well. And we are working our way through a series of Easter encounters. And we started a couple of weeks ago looking at Judas, and last week we looked at Simon, the most privileged man in the world to carry the cross of Jesus. And this morning we're going to look at a Good Friday conversion. And if I was to ask you what firstly springs to mind when we refer to a Good Friday conversion, then I guess most of us would respond and say it's the thief on the cross, the dying thief, and we would accept that. But there was another one, of course, which we will look at briefly today. Now, 5 days before Good Friday, as Jesus was preparing himself to go to Jerusalem and go to the cross, Jesus said some significant words. He said, "If I be lifted up from the earth, I will draw all men unto myself." And many take that, of course, as an understanding of the power of the cross and the magnetism of the cross. And 5 days later, on Good Friday, that prophetic promise that Jesus made is being realized. Because the other conversion that we see on Good Friday is that of a Roman centurion. And 3 out of the 4 gospel accounts mention a Roman centurion standing at the foot of the cross. It was all in a day's work for him, of course. It was just routine. He wasn't a particularly religious man. It was just another day at work for him. And he was merely there out of duty. He had seen many people come and go and was quite hardened and quite conditioned to some of the brutality that he would have witnessed. But he was a centurion, and that shows he was quite a high-ranking official in the Roman army, in that he had direct command over 100 soldiers. We know very little about him. He remains unnamed. We only know his rank, but we know that he would probably be battle-hardened, and he would be a hard nut to crack, and he wasn't afraid of anything. As I say, presided over many deaths like this, probably numb, insensitive to the suffering that he would have witnessed. He would have heard men scream in anger. He would have seen men retaliate and plead for mercy and for pardon, and blaspheme God and curse the soldiers. But on this day, this first Good Friday, this Roman centurion reacts in a very different manner to the way you would expect. And because the scene unfolding before him is very different to what he would normally see. And as the centurion would have looked around at those that were gathered, just a small number gathered, and he would have heard some of them mocking and shouting, "If you are the Son of God, then save yourself and come down from the cross." And they were hurling insults, and all this was sustained and prolonged. And he would have witnessed all that mockery and all that verbal abuse. But there was something very different that was happening before his very eyes. There was something different about Jesus to this centurion. Now, in all probability, of course, this Roman centurion would have been in the company of Jesus for the last 18 or 24 hours. He would have been with Jesus from the time of his arrest, maybe in the garden, and until his burial. So he'd had a lot of time to reflect on what he saw. He was up close and personal. He had a lot of time to reflect on the mannerisms and the reactions of Jesus. And as I've said, when most men would have cursed and retaliated and would have swore out in retribution as they were being crucified, that wasn't the case with Jesus. Isaiah prophesied 700 years before this that he would be led as a lamb to the slaughter. And as Jesus was nailed to that cross, And the only words he cried out was for God to forgive those that were doing it to him. And they were words of forgiveness, of course. And that would have made a big impact on the centurion. You know, maybe he was troubled by that prayer. You know, with the soldiers doing their worst. And all Jesus could pray for was for the Father to forgive them, because they knew not what they were doing. He saw the tenderness of Jesus, even though he was suffering, even though he was being ridiculed and crucified in a brutal manner. Jesus still shows such care and compassion, and he reaches out to his mother, as you know, and to John, and links them together, and then, of course, ends it all with those three amazing words: "It is finished." The Gospels tell us that the tombs were opened. There was a violent earthquake shaking the earth. The rocks split in two. The centurion witnessed all these supernatural happenings, and he was filled with awe, says the Bible. He greatly feared, and because of what he saw. And Luke tells us in his account that when he saw what happened, he glorified God. And like Simon, the centurion was privileged to see what he did, to be there. He saw it firsthand. He saw the creation's response to the Creator's death. He saw the sun go dark. He felt like the earth was moving under his feet. He hadn't seen anything like this before. This wasn't all in a day's work for him. He is deeply stirred. He's traumatized by what he's seeing happening, that the suffering of Jesus and the way that he endures it. He's seeing more than he can possibly put into words. The centurion had probably not listened to Jesus during his life of teaching. He had not been to the manger when Jesus came as a babe. He had probably not seen any of the miracles. He didn't even see probably the way Jesus conducted himself, his lifestyle. The only thing he sees was the way Jesus died. And that was enough to make him believe. The centurion wasn't steeped in the Hebrew scriptures, and he didn't know all the people that Jesus had encountered along the way. He knew very little about the background of Jesus. It wasn't his job description to know. He never sat in the synagogue. He never sat in the temple courts and listened to Jesus teaching. However, he saw something in Jesus. Well, Jesus is praying for his enemies to be forgiven, and he's given up his life without complaint. What kind of love is this? He's caring for others. He's reaching out for others while his life is being taken away. It's a staggering way to die. This dignified way of dying. He gives out this loud victory shout. The centurion was there with the mother of Jesus, of course, and John and some other ladies. But you know, the ground is always level at the cross. It doesn't matter who you are. It doesn't matter where you've been. It doesn't matter where you come from, what you've done. We all need the forgiving grace of God. And instead of feeling like he would on a normal day of satisfaction of a job done, job completed, let's go home, that day he underwent a life-changing transformation. It was as a result of looking at what he saw, this epic death of the Son of God, grappling with the issue of sin on that first Good Friday. As a result of witnessing that, something stirs within him. He declares his newfound belief and says, truly, this was the Son of God. Making a public confession like that could have got him in an awful lot of trouble, of course. He could have lost his job as a result of it. In many ways, it was political suicide for him to make that statement. But he was so moved. by what he saw. Truly this was the Son of God. Here's a man declaring that Jesus is the Son of God. The disciples, with the exception of John, they'd scattered. They'd left. They'd gone back into hiding. And it's left to this Gentile soldier. And that's interesting as well. Jesus said, I will draw all men to myself. And it's a Gentile soldier that actually confesses Jesus before others. It's important to confess Jesus, of course, before men. Jesus told us that. He reminded us that whoever confesses me before others, he said, I will acknowledge him before my Father in heaven. And of course, conversely, those who deny Jesus, who are offended by Jesus, who hide away, shy away from confessing Jesus before men, in the ultimate, of course, it will happen to you. Jesus will say, I never knew you. And there were many around that cross that day who didn't understand what was happening. They didn't understand who Jesus really was, but it was the soldier. This hard-nosed, brutal soldier. He got it. He saw that Jesus was more than a preacher. He was more than a teacher. He was more than a carpenter. And it fell to this nameless foreigner to make a declaration. You know, the dying thief and the centurion will be very busy in heaven, I think, because lots of people will want to listen to their testimony. Saved on Good Friday at the cross. It doesn't get better than that. Saved at the foot of the cross on the day Jesus was crucified. You know, we can all remember the time when we were saved, whether it was in a church setting or in a house group or on the street or whatever, and we can pinpoint that's where we were saved. You know, in heaven we'll be able to listen to a Gentile soldier, a thief who reached out in the dying moments of his life. They were saved at the cross. The Gentile convert, the first fruits of a mighty harvest that would result from Jesus dying on the cross. I will draw all men to myself. It's very interesting that this man, the first man to declare his faith after the death of Jesus, was a Gentile. And so this morning I want us to reflect on the fact that of the power of the cross, the power, the magnetism of Jesus in drawing people in, and this soldier having an Easter encounter. He never thought, he went to work that day not thinking anything at all. But he returned from work. He returned home from work that day, a changed man. I wonder what he told his family. I wonder how he defined what had happened to him. But I do wonder how he felt on Easter Sunday morning as well, when he says this was the Son of God. Now the Son of God he's back with them. He's appearing to them. He's engaging and connecting with them. I wonder how he felt. I wonder what his journey was like thereafter. I wonder how he embraced the Christian faith and what impact he made going forward. So that's our Easter encounter this morning. It's a Roman soldier who felt a stirring in his heart by what he saw, and he was saved on Good Friday at the cross. Have a fabulous Holy Week. Enjoy Easter weekend, and I shall see you again next Tuesday for our next edition of Tuesday Temple Takeaway. The Lord bless you.